Remember when we built that fort in the garage, Emma? You insisted on painting it purple because you said it was the color of magic, and I laughed at you. But you were right. There was magic in that fort. It's where we planned to live forever, where we promised we'd never grow up, never grow apart. I'm sorry I broke that promise, little star. Emma Martinez froze on the park path, her morning coffee slipping from her trembling fingers and splattering across the concrete. The old man sitting on the bench had spoken with the gentle warmth of someone who'd known her all her life, but she'd never seen him before. More disturbing still, he'd called her Little Star, a nickname only one person had ever used, someone who'd been dead for 7 years. She'd been walking through Riverside Park on her way to work, the same route she took every morning, lost in thoughts about deadlines and meetings. The elderly man on the wooden bench had seemed unremarkable at first glance. Silver hair, kind eyes, wearing a worn cardigan that looked like something her grandfather might have owned. She'd barely noticed him until he'd spoken her name. "Emma," he'd said softly as she passed. "Emma Martinez, you're all grown up now." She'd turned, confused, wondering if he was perhaps a neighbor she'd forgotten or a friend of her parents. But when their eyes met, she felt a jolt of recognition that made no logical sense. Those eyes, deep brown with flecks of gold, were familiar in a way that made her heart race. "I'm sorry," she'd said politely. "Do we know each other?" The old man had smiled then, a smile so achingly familiar that it took her breath away. "We know each other better than anyone else in the world, Emma. We always have." Now, standing frozen in shock as his words about the Purple Fort echoed in her mind, Emma felt reality shifting around her like sand. The fort he'd described had been real, a secret hideaway she and her older brother David had built when she was 8 and he was 12. They'd spent an entire summer in that makeshift sanctuary, planning adventures and sharing dreams. But David had died in a car accident when Emma was 15, taking their shared memories with him to the grave. No one else had known about the fort, about the purple paint, about their childhood promise to never grow apart. "That's impossible," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. "How could you know about that?" The old man patted the bench beside him with a gentle gesture that was heartbreakingly familiar. "Sit with me, little star. I know this is confusing, but I need you to understand something important." Emma's rational mind screamed at her to walk away, to dismiss this as some kind of cruel prank or coincidence. But something deeper than logic kept her rooted to the spot. The way he moved his hands when he spoke, the tilt of his head when he was thinking, even the way he said her name. It was all achingly reminiscent of David. "I don't understand what's happening," she said, slowly, approaching the bench but not yet sitting down. "Who are you? How do you know things about my childhood that no one else could know?" "I'm someone who loves you more than life itself," he replied softly. "Someone who's been watching over you for 7 years, wishing I could find a way to let you know I never really left." Emma's knees gave out and she collapsed onto the bench beside him. Are you claiming to be David? My brother David?" "I know how impossible it sounds. I know every rational part of your mind is rejecting what I'm telling you. But Emma, souls don't disappear when bodies die. Sometimes, if the love is strong enough, if there's unfinished business, we find ways to come back." Tears began streaming down Emma's face as she stared at this stranger who spoke with such intimate knowledge of her deepest wounds. "David died 7 years ago. I watched him die in that hospital. I held his hand as he took his last breath." "You did," the old man said gently, "and I felt your hand in mine as I let go of that life. But Emma, I also felt your pain, your grief, your anger at being left alone. I couldn't bear knowing how much you were hurting because of me. This is insane. You're not David. David was 19 when he died. You must be 70 years old. Souls don't age the way bodies do, little star. When we return, we don't always come back in the same form, at the same age. Sometimes an old soul chooses an old body because it knows it has limited time to accomplish what it needs to do." Emma shook her head vigorously, trying to reject what she was hearing, even as her heart began to recognize something essential and true in this man's presence. If you're really David, prove it. Tell me something else that only he would know. The old man smiled sadly and reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small object that made Emma gasp. It was a silver bracelet with a tiny star charm. The bracelet David had given her for her 13th birthday, the one she'd lost during the chaos of his funeral week. "You thought you'd lost this forever," he said, placing it gently in her palm. "But I found it, Emma. I've been keeping it safe for you." Emma stared at the bracelet, her mind reeling. She'd searched everywhere for it after David's death, torn apart her room, her parents' house, even went back to the funeral home looking for it. It had been one more loss in an already devastating time, one more piece of David that had disappeared from her life. "Where did you find this?" she whispered. It fell between the couch cushions in the funeral home's family room. "You were crying so hard that day, and it slipped off your wrist when you were reaching for tissues. I saw it happen, but I couldn't tell you then because I was transitioning, moving from one existence to another." "I don't believe in reincarnation," Emma said, even as she fastened the bracelet around her wrist with shaking fingers. "I don't believe in any of this." "You don't have to believe in the mechanism, Emma. You just have to believe in love. Do you remember what I used to tell you when you were scared?" Without thinking, Emma whispered the words that had been David's constant reassurance throughout their childhood. "Love is the only thing stronger than fear, and nothing can ever make me stop loving you." "That's right, little star, and death wasn't strong enough to make me stop loving you either." They sat in silence for several minutes, watching early morning joggers and dog walkers pass by, living their normal lives in a world that suddenly seemed far more mysterious and magical than Emma had ever imagined. Finally, she found her voice again. "Why now? Why today? Why are you here?" "Because you've been losing yourself to grief, Emma. For 7 years, you've been living like you died too. You stopped painting. Do you remember how much you loved to paint? You stopped laughing the way you used to. You stopped believing in magic and wonder and all the things that made you uniquely you." Emma felt fresh tears welling up because everything he said was true. Since David's death, she'd thrown herself into work, into routines, into anything that would numb the pain of his absence. She'd given up on dreams, on spontaneity, on the kind of joyful living that David had always encouraged. "I miss you so much," she sobbed. "Every single day I miss you. I don't know how to be happy without you. But you don't have to be without me, Emma. I've been with you all along. Every time you felt a sudden breeze on a still day, every time you found a penny heads up on the sidewalk, every time you heard our favorite song randomly on the radio. That was me, trying to remind you that love doesn't end with death. I thought those were just coincidences. There are no coincidences when it comes to love, little star. There are only connections we're not trained to recognize." The old man reached into his other pocket and pulled out something that made Emma's heart stop. It was a small canvas, bigger than a postcard, with a painting she'd done when she was 10 years old. It showed 2 children, her and David, sitting in a purple fort under a starry sky. "You painted this the summer we built the fort. You gave it to me for my birthday. Remember? You said it was so I'd never forget our promise to stay together forever." Emma took the painting with reverence, studying the childish brushstrokes and the bright purple walls of their imaginary sanctuary. "I thought this was lost too. Mom threw away so many of my old paintings when we moved. I saved it," he said, simply, "just like I saved the bracelet, just like I've been trying to save you from drowning in grief. How is this possible? How are you here, looking like someone else but knowing everything David knew? I don't pretend to understand all the mysteries of existence, Emma. I just know that consciousness is far more complex than most people realize. When my young body died, my soul, my essence, my memories, my love for you, that all continued. And when I met this body's previous occupant, an old man named Henry who was ready to move on to whatever comes next, we made an arrangement." "An arrangement?" Henry had lived a good life, but he'd never had children, never experienced the kind of sibling love we shared. In exchange for letting me borrow his body for this one conversation, I shared some of my memories with him. He got to experience, for a brief moment, what it feels like to have a sister who loves you unconditionally. Emma stared at this impossible man who spoke of soul arrangements and borrowed bodies as casually as discussing the weather. "So, you're David, but you're also someone named Henry? I'm David's love for you, given form and voice through Henry's kindness. I'm here because both of our souls agreed that you needed to know the truth. Death is not the end. Love is not lost, and you don't have to carry your grief alone anymore. What happens now? Do you disappear again? Do I go back to my normal life, pretending this never happened?" The old man took her hands in his, and Emma felt a warmth that was entirely familiar. "Now you go back to living, really living. You start painting again. You let yourself laugh without feeling guilty. You open your heart to the possibility that life can be beautiful even after loss. Will I see you again? You'll see me in sunsets that take your breath away. You'll hear me in music that moves your soul. You'll feel me in moments of unexpected joy. And Emma, someday, when your time in this world is complete, we'll be together again in whatever form existence takes next." Emma looked around the park, suddenly seeing it with new eyes. The morning light seemed brighter, the colors more vivid. Even the sounds of traffic and distant conversation seemed like a symphony she'd been too numb to hear for years. "I have so many questions," she said, "and you'll find the answers when you're ready for them. For now, just remember this. You are loved beyond measure. Your life has meaning and purpose, and death is not the opposite of life. It's just a different chapter in an eternal story." The old man stood up slowly, moving with the careful deliberation of someone whose borrowed time was running short. "I have to go now, little star. Henry's soul is ready to continue its own journey, and I've said what I came to say." "Wait," Emma said desperately, jumping to her feet. "I don't know how to say goodbye to you again." "Then don't say goodbye. Say until we meet again. Because we will. Love guarantees it." He hugged her then, and for a moment, Emma felt like she was 8 years old again, safe in her big brother's arms, believing that nothing bad could ever happen as long as he was there to protect her. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were different, cloudier, more confused, as if he was becoming someone else. "Miss, are you all right?" he asked in a voice that was subtly different, more hesitant. "You look upset." Emma studied his face, seeing the same features but recognizing that the essential presence she'd been talking to was gone. "I'm fine," she said softly. Thank you for everything." The old man looked puzzled but pleased. "I'm not sure what I did, but you're very welcome. Have a beautiful day, dear." He walked away slowly, leaving Emma standing alone by the bench with David's bracelet on her wrist and his childhood painting in her hand. She watched until he disappeared around a corner, then sat back down to process what had just happened. Over. The following months, Emma's life transformed in ways that amazed everyone who knew her. She enrolled in art classes for the first time since college, rediscovering the joy of creation that had once defined her. She began traveling, exploring places she and David had dreamed of visiting together. She started volunteering at a children's hospital, sharing art therapy with young patients facing their own struggles. Most importantly, she began living with the kind of open-hearted joy that David had always encouraged. She laughed more freely, loved more deeply, and approached each day with curiosity and wonder instead of just going through the motions. When friends asked about the change in her, Emma would simply say that she'd had a conversation that reminded her what was truly important in life. She never told anyone about the old man in the park, knowing that some experiences are too sacred and too personal to share. But sometimes, on quiet mornings when the light hit the park just right, Emma would sit on that same bench and whisper updates about her life to the space where her brother's love had manifested for one impossible, perfect conversation. And sometimes, she could swear she felt a gentle breeze that carried with it the unmistakable sensation of someone listening, someone proud of how far she'd come. The bracelet never left her wrist, and the small painting hung in her studio, reminding Heard daily that love really is the only thing stronger than fear, and that the connections we make with others transcend the boundaries of life and death. She'd learned that grief doesn't have to be the end of a relationship. It can be the beginning of a deeper understanding of what it means to love someone forever. Emma never saw the old man again, but she didn't need to. She carried David's love with her always now, not as a weight of loss, but as a source of strength and joy. She'd discovered that the people we love never really leave us. They just change the way they show up in our lives, speaking to us through synchronicities, signs, and sometimes, if we're very lucky, through the kindness of strangers who become vessels for the most important messages of all. Have you ever had an encounter that seemed impossible but felt undeniably real? Do you believe that love can transcend death and find ways to reach us when we need it most? Share your own experiences with unexplained connections in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart or opened your mind to new possibilities about life, death, and the eternal nature of love, give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories that explore the mysteries of human connection and consciousness.